So true.
Hi, everybody.
So
I tell
true.
people after 31 years of covering the crime beat, you don't know what a criminal looks like. I have people say, but Lori, he looked so nice. He was dressed so nice. He had such a nice haircut. Let me just tell you, because they look like you, talk like you, dress like you, does not mean they are as nice as you. And I tell everybody, it's not about living in fear of everybody, but it is about having your guard up. Because I find that we are more likely to drop our guard around a woman, for instance. And I have interviewed a lot of women who are violent and evil and commit terrible crimes. So I don't think we should drop our guard around a woman. People say, oh, it's a teenager. What are they going to do? And I've covered teenagers, a 14-year-old who broke into a house and a woman happened to come home and surprise him, and he put a gun to her head and forced her into the family's office. And even though she was begging for her life, he put that gun to her head and pulled the trigger and murdered her. 14 years old. This happened about a mile from where I live, and she and I were about the same age at the time. And then he was caught on video in the jail making a jail phone call going, they called me headshot, not a person who is exactly sorry for what they had done. So when you saw him in court, he looked like this little kid, a little boy, but he was a cold-blooded killer. And then people say, oh, Lori, they're a senior citizen. They're harmless. But one of the worst serial killers I ever covered was a guy who was 62 years old, and he was a newspaper delivery guy. He would not deliver their papers. They'd call and say, hey, you forgot my paper. So he'd go by, and when he knocked, of course, what'd they do? Open the door. And he forced two of these women through their homes, dragged them into their bathtubs and drowned them, strangled them in their bathtubs. And police had no idea that he had murdered those two women. He was in the process of murdering a woman when her granddaughter happened to stop by and check on her, and they found him. And that's when they brought him down to the jail for me to interview. And sometimes when I interview a suspect, they're handcuffed. Sometimes they're not. It just depends. I was glad that day he was handcuffed, because even though he had a gray hair in his beard and a cane, and at first I thought, oh, maybe they have the wrong guy. You guys, he talked about nothing except for the thrill that those murders gave him. And he confessed to the previous two murders before police even knew about those. They thought those women had died of natural causes. He said it was a thrill. He had always dreamed about strangling someone after seeing it in a movie. He got all hot and red and sweaty, and all he thought about was killing women. And he was one of the scariest criminals I've ever interviewed. And believe me, that's saying something in 31 years.